Do you trust the people next to you? Your friends, family, significant other? Because if you ask me, it's a miracle that anyone is able to trust each other at all. Your best friend could be plotting all sorts of heinous acts in their head, and you'd have zero way of knowing. It's not like you can read people's minds. You simply have to trust, based on their actions, that they're a good person. But theoretically, if they were a perfect manipulator, there'd be no way to know you were being deceived. The only strategy to combat this, then, is to shut your heart off from others completely. This is the conflict that lies at the heart of Suspension, the third book in the Zaregoto series, written by Nisio Iichan. The primary theme of this novel is trust. Now, let's just skip ahead a few pages, yada yada, blah blah. Aha! There in the afterword, right from Nisio's mouth. As you can see, this novel has neither theme nor thesis. Shit! Merry 2024, Bagel Bros, and welcome to part 3 of my series reviewing and analyzing Zaregoto, where we dissect the themes of Suspension, a book the author of which admitted had none. Don't worry, you don't need to have seen the prior 2 videos to understand this one. Fair warning, unbridled spoilers ahoy for a murder mystery I think is pretty good. Also, make sure to murder the subscribe button in a locked room if you haven't already. It's free, because for some reason specifying that gets more people to click on it. And with that out of the way, even in its setting, Suspension is trying to deceive both the reader and the characters. It's obvious from an early point that Sumiyuri Academy is no ordinary high school. Our protagonist, E, has been tasked with rescuing a girl named Hime who's been disallowed from leaving the school. He does this by cross-dressing and forcibly infiltrating Sumiyuri. Now, listen, I'm straight. But on a more serious note, what kind of high school prevents people from leaving it? Sumiyuri is the answer, though its students refer to it as Hangham High. While Hangham High poses as a high-class, hyper-refined girls' school for the elite of society, the reality is more akin to a war zone. Girls are trained for combat, and ever since Noah Origami took over the school, it's become even more harsh and cutthroat, leading to students regularly just straight up dying. Obviously, this is pretty illegal, hence the facade. It's deeply fitting that a novel about trust and mistrust is set within the confines of a high school positively riddled with deception. The way the truth of the setting is revealed is gradual, which keeps its mystique palpable for longer. And while E infiltrating a school full of hyper-alert child soldiers completely undetected until he meets up with Hime feels rather contrived, even with Jun and Shiogi's explanation of E's nature, the other half of how this gradual reveal was facilitated is awesome to me. Jun doesn't tell E anything about the school he's infiltrating. There were tactical reasons for this, but it's also because she's just not one to explain things. She lives life fast and loose, and has zero patience for anyone but herself, so of course she dumps E into this war zone without explanation. Hime is guarded enough to not be overly explanatory as to the school's true nature, and at first assumes E knows more than he actually does. E in turn, is too lazy to bother prying for more than the bare minimum information to begin with. In any other book, the other characters just happening to not explain the true nature of Hang'em High, despite knowing it, would be silly. But in Zaregoto, it miraculously works, because it feels like what would actually happen considering the personalities of these characters. Hang'em High, at least on paper, is the most interesting setting we've had in the entire Zaregoto series so far, though I do think it fumbles the execution somewhat, to the point where I actually prefer V1's Wet Crow's Feather Island. It feels like it could have been far more than it actually ended up being, in large part due to V3's short length. On the vertical release, Suspension falls just short of 200 pages, compared to the 300 plus of V1 and 2. I'll make this case even more later in the video, but I think this book should have been longer, and one aspect that suffers because of this is the side characters. Now you may be thinking, Crunchy, weren't we just talking about the setting? Why are you bringing up the side characters all of a sudden? That's like a separate thing entirely. See, the side characters are all students of Sumiyuri Academy, and they should have been what hard sold this setting as interesting. I don't care about Wet Crow's Feather Island just because it has a cool mansion. I care about it because that cool mansion is filled with super interesting geniuses and Iria Akagami living her best life. I really wanted to know how such a desperate environment as Hang'em High affected the people within it, and it's not like we don't get any of that. They're clearly on edge, and in Shiogi's case, downright psychopathic, but it feels like we could have gotten an even better sense of the school and the lives of the people within it by either having more side characters or getting more page time with the ones it already has. V3 only really has two major side characters, Tamamo Saijo and Shiogi Hagihara. That's not a lot, especially compared to prior volumes. Tamamo is an extremely fun character. For the 6 pages she talks in before she dies. It took me a hot minute to warm up to Shiogi, but I'm glad I finally began to like her 3 pages before she died. Are you starting to see my point? The characters all die right as I start to like them, and if I just got to see more students, or more of the students of this academy, I feel like I would be way more attached to it than I currently am. But hey, it's not a huge deal. The setting is still good overall, and we get to learn a lot about how it affected Hime, because she's a main character, which leads me to...
I don't mean it a man, but I'd really love to meet you because I'm sexually attracted to you, Knuckles the Echidna.
Trust is sad. Trust is really sad. Everyone is alone. So the more trusting you are, the greater the shock of betrayal. Trust breaks, it crumbles, and it never goes back to the way it was. The prior sentiment is ease, stated in a conversation with Hime. Suspension is a novel about trust, and E has trust issues. Being both a pessimist and a loner, he sees humanity as inherently untrustworthy, going so far as to say that the more people you trust, the lonelier you are. The logic behind this statement is that once trust breaks, you'll break with it, multiplied by however many people inevitably betray you, leaving you hollow, and only able to rely on yourself. Hime, upon hearing this from E, counters by saying, "But being alone is lonely." E, unfazed, says that if you can't live alone, you're better off dead. Little does he know that he and Hime are more aligned on this subject than he thinks. So, some context. Hime throughout the series has been portrayed as a Genki, sunshiny girl, and a dreadfully poor fit for Hang'em High. She's also canonically brain damaged. Say it with me now, just like me for real. She's very similar to Tomo Kunagisa, E's girlfriend. In fact, they're so alike that she actively crosses the wires in E's brain through her mere presence, causing him to grow unusually attached to her in a process that E describes as autotoxemia. I'm just gonna say it while I'm on the subject. E conflating Tomo and Hime in his mind is easily the most interesting thing this novel does with him. He not only grows attached to her, when E would typically describe himself as someone who lacks the capacity to grow attached to others, but he also tries to help Hime out as a way of atoning for the horrible things he's done to Tomo in his past. Of course, the atonement only exists within E's mind, but nonetheless, he tries to attain it. Except, his autotoxemia wears off by the end of the novel, as E realizes in no uncertain fashion that there's a world of difference between Tomo and Hime. So as I mentioned earlier, this novel is a murder mystery. Normally I pull out the crimb board way later than this, but like I said, V3's pretty short, so what can you do? Hang'em High's director, Noah Origami, is killed in a room, the door of which can only be unlocked with Noah's handprints via a biometric hand scanner. Jun, E, and Hime break into the room by fritzing the electronic lock with a stun gun, only to find Noah's corpse, chopped into 12 pieces with what appears to have been a chainsaw judging by the way it was cut. Her head is suspended from the ceiling. Oh, that's why it's called suspension. The door was locked and intact upon their arrival, and there are no other viable methods of entry into the room. How did this murder occur, and who did it? Luckily for me, I don't need to be nearly as long-winded as last time. Firstly, while the following explanation is canonically unconfirmed, the locked room was probably created when the perpetrator was allowed into Noah's chamber for one reason or another. Noah was then murdered as such, but then they took her disembodied hand with them outside the room to relock the door with the hand scanner from the outside. They then kept the hand with them until Jun, E, and Hime entered the room. Then, while the other two were still shocked at the sight of Noah's dismembered corpse, they covertly placed the hand back at the scene. Chopping the body up into so many pieces was just a way to cover their tracks. You've probably already deduced who the killer is at this point. With this explanation, it has to be one of our three main characters. Anyway, Hime did it. She also killed Tamamo and Shiogi for learning too much or to protect E, and shortly after makes an attempt on E's life. But why did she kill Noah? Simple. Noah is the director of Hang'em High, the place that Hime hates. She also kills all the faculty members. Sis has zero chill. Hime wanted Hang'em High to be completely and utterly destroyed, and this is one way to do it. But why a chainsaw? As it turns out, Hime is a string user named Zigzag, aka someone who harnesses the power of specialized string to dismember people. However, Hime's string cuts up bodies extremely neatly in a way no other person at the school can replicate. So, she used something that cut much rougher to throw off suspicion that it was her. She lies to everyone by posing as if she weren't the killer. She lies to E by saying that she isn't Zigzag. But on a deeper level, her entire personality is a facade. She appears exactly like Tomo, but while Tomo herself may be warped, it's fair to say that Hime is warped much further, or at the very least, in the opposite direction. Other people are unbelievable, aren't they? They betray you at the drop of a hat, deceive you, and explain it all away. They dismiss other people without a thought. They hit other people anytime they feel like it, despite the fact that they know it'll hurt, precisely because they know it'll hurt. Basically, everyone is a fake. The prior sentiment is Hime's, stated in a conversation with E. E, upon hearing this from Hime, throws an old line back at her. Is it lonely, being so alone? Yes, she replies. When Hime first meets E, she wraps her string all around him, without him even being aware of it, and points a recorder at him threateningly. She didn't trust him. She then pretended to trust him, opening up to him with a false persona. But she still didn't trust him. She doesn't trust anyone. Probably not even Jun Aikawa. Jun is the woman who Hime respects and likes the most in the world. A significant amount of her plan revolved around specifically fooling-ish Jun. Yet E doubts that Hime trusts even Jun fully. The crooked path of Zigzag is one where everyone is a potential enemy and no proof is fit to show otherwise. But let's go back to Jun. Jun is humanity's strongest contractor, a woman whose existence defies all logic, yet simultaneously contains no inconsistencies. She should be impossible to fool, but the only reason Hime nearly got away with it is because Jun trusts her friends 100%. Even if all the evidence pointed to Hime Hime, it's simply not in Jun's nature to doubt her friends. And let's go back to Tomo. Tomo doesn't trust her friends universally, she trusts the universe universally. It's because of how good-hearted she is that E tried to destroy her when she was younger. Though we still don't know exactly what this entailed, we do know that E violated her trust in a way that he thought impossible for her to recover from. But although E refers to her as dead and alive simultaneously, she's still as kind-hearted and trusting as she always was. Her trust in the world, as well as her good nature, miraculously survived. Which means that Tomo's existence is cold, hard, or perhaps soft, warm evidence that both E and Hime's assertion that everyone in the world is fake is provably false. Simply put, suspension isn't just about E and Hime distrusting humanity. It's about showing the contrast between those who are overly distrusting versus those who are trusting and perhaps even overly trusting. What each of these four characters have in common is that their trust or mistrust of people or a certain category of people is overwhelmingly strong. For E, it seems to be everyone that isn't Tomo. For Jun, it's everyone she considers a friend. And for Hime and Tomo, that seems to be literally everyone on opposite sides of the spectrum. So what should we make of this contrast and the way it's portrayed? Though the book gives no explicit answers as to whose way of trusting is right, the implication is obvious. Hime has shut her heart off from the world completely. And the result? She's miserable. She's self-despising, believing herself to be so long spoiled it's too late to ever be fresh-faced again. She doesn't feel love nor joy and pines for happiness so much that when she's about to kill E, all it takes to give her pause for thought is for E to promise to take her in. Let her live next to him in his apartment complex, which he describes as a run-down but modestly happy place, filled with fun characters. He promises to help her out with college work, to help her work towards a future where she can have a normal job and live a reasonably happy life. Hime is an emotional wreck, and her plan reflects that. Instead of being expertly thought out, it's moderately clever, but also has a completely vague end goal. Hime wanted to hide the murder from Jun, but she also wanted to die at Jun's hands after being found out. The way I see it, Hime was in two minds about what she actually wanted to happen by her plan's endgame. Fool Jun, be killed by Jun, perhaps both suited her, but she ended up with neither. It'd be amiss of me not to blame some of Hime's unhappiness on the environment of Hang'em High, but it'd be equally amiss of me not to point out how her terminally mistrusting attitude and inability to open up to others only compounded her misery. Jun, you're too soft, I said. Where was your mind reading on this one? Huh? Not to sound like Maeda Keijiro Toshimasu, but trusting and being betrayed feels better to me than being suspicious and staying safe. Something I find interesting is that E really isn't a trustworthy person. There's a moment in the novel where he considers selling Jun and Hime's location to the enemy in exchange for his own safety. This is not to mention his unspecified, but likely horrific, actions towards Tomo in the past. He's apathetic about friendship and distrusting of humanity, so he sees the option of backstabbing as convenient as it is available. To get personal for a bit, while I trust most of my friends, 99%, I can't particularly say I trust humanity. Nor should you, honestly. Sure, being as cynical as I am towards the world probably won't do your mental health any good, but as a default, people should have to earn your trust. There should be some kind of vetting process before you trust that the guy in the white van really does just want to give you candy. But on a scale of Hime to Tomo, I'm probably a less extreme version of Jun, and that runs the risk of befriending a Hime, or even an E. To trust at all opens you up to betrayal, but to never trust leads to something much darker. A lonely half-existence where the world is a war zone and everyone's an assassin, not unlike Hang'em High. The world certainly isn't rainbows and sunshine all the time, but it's not like everyone is out to get you. In fact, some people are out to get you to a better place mentally, and that's pretty cool. To trust is to endanger yourself, but some risk is necessary to find happiness. And while trust can be difficult, and happiness more so, the ability to trust is a necessary one. Now, that would be a good place to end the video, but there's still one question I've been avoiding this whole time. Is suspension actually good? Fair warning, unbridled spoilers ahoy for a murder mystery I think is pretty good. Oh, I guess I did answer it.
18 naked creepers in the biomes of Minecraft.
On the last episode of Bagel's Bizarre Adventure, we started the Zaregoto tier list, with all my splendidly named tiers lined up as such. V1 and 2 share a spot in the Zaregoto tier, both about on par with each other. After having some time to think about it, V1's probably slightly better in my opinion. Don't kill me. But I'm pretty solid on the tier placements. So how does Suspension stack up against the prior two volumes? Well, before we place V3 on this list, some context. Putting V1 and V2 on the same tier is already an absurdly spicy take within the Zaregoto community. Like, I was preparing for war with that one. The Zaregoto community generally considers V3 to be the worst of the first 6 novels, so before I read V3, to be honest, I really wanted to put it in the I Wanna Sex Nisio tier. I thought it'd be so funny to come out swinging in this video with the hottest take ever on this novel, and lose the faith of everyone in the community who had even the tiniest shred of respect for my opinions. But then I read the book, and it goes right here, in limbo between the pretty good for real and heck tiers. For once, I don't have a hot take. I'm sorry. Hey guys, welcome to my Minecraft Let's Play. Today we're gonna be covering the shortcomings of Volume 3 of Zaregoto. We've already covered the setting and side characters, but I also think the mystery of this novel is easily the weakest of the entire series. More specifically, I don't get what's so nonsensical about it. To recap, Zaregoto means nonsense in Polish, which is emblematic of its extreme plot twists that intentionally bend suspension of disbelief, but in ways that are so fun and make just enough sense that I not only buy into them, but consider them a major appeal of the series. Both of the prior novels had mind-bending twists that made you raise an eyebrow as they simultaneously raised your mood. V3 doesn't have any big mind-blowing twists on par with the prior two, which just doesn't feel as satisfying considering how well the prior two mysteries paid off. But furthermore, I just didn't feel nearly as invested in solving the mystery of this novel as I did for the prior two. And I think a big part of that comes down to yet another symptom of the novel's short length. There aren't enough suspects. V1 has 13 characters listed at the beginning, and while there are quite a few who the reader knows almost certainly didn't do it for various reasons, that still leaves quite a few suspects to choose from. V2 has 12 characters listed, and while only 4 of them are really compelling suspects, 5 if you count Miko for some reason, the book got as much mileage out of those 4 suspects as possible, with 2 of them having murdered for one reason or another, using methods that were difficult to guess. V3 has 7 characters listed at the start. Total, one of which doesn't even make an appearance. 3 of them are viable suspects, but unlike V2, which got a ton of mileage out of just 4 characters, in V3, 2 of the primary suspects die, and then it's revealed that it was Hime. And I'ma keep it a buck with you, I never thought Tamamo did it for even a second, because she dies so quickly that it's obvious she had no part in the murder, since that would be narratively unsatisfying. With more suspects, more page time for the suspects, or hell, even just using the suspects in more clever ways, I think it'd really make me more curious as to who the killer was and more excited to see the reveal. And all of this would most likely require the volume to be straight up longer. To be honest, this is the first novel where I guessed who did it correctly. Asterisk. Once Shiogi revealed that she didn't kill Tamamo, I immediately guessed that Hime was Zigzag and that she killed both Noa and Tamamo, because literally who else could it be? In fairness to the novel, this is literally a few pages before the novel reveals everything, so it's not like I was quick on the uptake here. And also, the reveal still took me by surprise, because I thought that Hime doing it was such an easy choice at that point that there was no way she was actually the killer, but she was. It's not that I guessed who did it, that's the issue, but more so the fact that I did it mostly through metatextual knowledge and wasn't as interested in considering the actual facts of the crime scene as I was in the prior 2 volumes. Maybe it's on me for expecting another mind-blowing twist, but I don't know, man. V1 and V2 had such better mysteries. Now, I'm aware that V3 is supposed to mark the point in Zaregoto where the series begins to stray away from its classic mystery formula, and lean more towards being an action series. I think I prefer Hood Classic locked room mysteries, but I'm a Katanagatari fan, so I know Nisio can do action in a way I like. But I also don't think the action in this novel was compelling enough, or hell, even present enough to make up for the lackluster mystery. Something that shocked me more than anything, though, is that Hime before the plot twist isn't that fun of a character to me. Let's delve into why. First, we had Tomo. A bubbly and energetic girl, but with tons of cool stuff that endeared me to her, like being a techie and her and I's unique relationship. Then in V2, we had Mikoko, a bubbly and energetic girl. However, I enjoyed Mikoko and I's dynamic for reasons that his with Tomo didn't have, and the twist recontextualized her to make her even more interesting. Hime post-twist is an interesting character to me, but Hime pre-twist is a bubbly and energetic girl whose entire personality is that she's exactly like Tomo. For real. She has this gimmick where she constantly misspeaks because brain damage, but while Mikoko's gimmick of making up stupid similes endeared me to her, I've never found characters in stories misspeaking to be particularly charming. For the majority of the story, it felt like Hime was finally my breaking point for Tomo-adjacent characters. She looks like Tomo, she acts like Tomo, the point of her character is that he is trying to be nice to her to find some sort of personal redemption for what he did to Tomo, but she also doesn't have all the things that make Tomo cool. I feel like this kind of character would have worked better for me if there was just more to distinguish her from Tomo. Like I said, the stuff with E trying to redeem himself for what he did to Tomo is legitimately fascinating. But I just didn't care about Hime until I found out her entire personality was a facade. While this is easily the most negative I've been out of all 3 of these videos, I don't want to give off the impression that I hate this novel or anything. There's plenty of redeeming stuff in it. Plus, it's an Iichan book, and furthermore, a Zaregoto book. There's still a minimum amount of good it's basically guaranteed to have. I say, pretending to not hear the backlash V10 got in the Zaregoto Discord. If I had to put a number on it, I'd still give Suspension a light 7 out of 10. You know, this is normally the part of the video where I get way too personal, but this time I want to talk metatextually about this here YouTube series. In the first part I did nearly a year ago, I described my motives for starting this series as such. In addition to that, I like light novels, at least the ones that I've read so far. But on YouTube, the medium has far less content made about it than anime, not only because it's less popular in general, but also because it's more difficult to make visuals for written content, especially if you don't use a face cam. So I said, screw it. I'm gonna be the change I want to see in the world and read more Nisio Iichan while I'm at it. As of the end of this video, we are now halfway through my Zaregoto YouTube series, despite only being 3 books in out of 9. The psychological and Nekosogi radical novels will be covered all at once, so we're actually closer to the endgame of this series than you may think. Of course, there's always V10 plus the Saikyo and Ningen series to potentially cover, but that depends heavily on fanlation efforts. As it turns out, everyone who's read V10 hates it so much they refused to translate it into English, which is hilarious. Over the course of these past 3 videos, I've begun to realize why nobody makes popular light novel videos on YouTube. More specifically, making a video about a 2-decade-old book series is a great way to get diehard fans who ask for the next Zaregoto video on a weekly basis, keep up the good work, and a terrible way to get popular on YouTube, especially considering that these are by far the most time-intensive videos I do, and it's not even close. This video right here probably took 5 times as much work to get out as the Scott Pilgrim video, and while I obviously don't know how it'll perform yet, I somehow doubt it'll break 3,000 views. Please prove me wrong. This isn't meant to be me complaining about my algorithm, because I totally get it. I dislike the YouTube algorithm as much as the next guy, but niche media is just that. Niche. I can't reasonably expect a better turnout without a better marketing effort. I don't plan on putting this series on hiatus or anything, considering I already keep the Zare Bros waiting, but I more so want to use this segment as a contrast between my admittedly naive optimism at the beginning of the V1 video, as well as a time capsule of what the current state of the series is. I'm not trying to be a downer though. It's always good to have passion projects, even if they are time-consuming. And if I can find a way to market these such that they get views, expect way shorter breaks between Zaregoto videos. But for now, expect these videos when I get so sick of sucking up to seasonal anime viewers that I need to talk about something niche, or else my brain will explode. I guess that's just how I'm built. Yo, did you like the thumbnail for this video? I know I sure did. And you can see more art just like that by following IDactive on Twitter, and maybe even commission something for yourself. Also, special thanks to my friend MV Pacino. He recorded the Minecraft footage because my laptop is too abysmal to be able to record with OBS and capture footage from Minecraft at the same time. So thanks for that. It's like midnight right now and the video is supposed to be out tomorrow. Believe it or not, staying up till like 4 AM the day before a video is supposed to go out is not at all atypical for me. I'm great at scheduling. Anyway, I'm now gonna read out the patron names. In a separate take, I already had it recorded. Oops. Bidufus, CJ, Funky Boy Haas, Jose Ramirez, Karen Chan, KD Pack, Minnie, Neon Manta, Dr. Wu, God of Vile Eyes, Lotta Fanboy, and Seiko1516. Thank you for your patronage.